Sandy Weiner is a gift to the Ann Arbor community. He is out there doing really interesting things in the community, traveling all over the country and sometimes other places in the world, constantly growing, constantly doing cutting-edge work and learning cutting-edge things and sharing it with the community. So thank you for being the host, Sandy, and thank you for tonight.
Now we can all go home, right? So Bill said a lot of the things that I was going to say as a start about Crazy Wisdom, about this incredible journal, and and I don't know if there's any other place in the country that does anything anywhere close to this. So it is a great life accomplishment, one of those lifetime achievement awards. So yeah, thank you all for coming to this event tonight. It got started in various ways, but part of the point of a salon is so that the audience will be participating members. So we are going to, and we have 5 presenters, which is more than is normal, at least in my experience. And so we're going to limit ourselves to 8 minutes each. I could talk for 30, each of the panelists could talk for about an hour and 30 minutes, but we're going to limit ourselves to 8 minutes each, and then open it up for whatever questions and comments and great observations and all that you have. And so, first is Nate Ayers in our panel. I'll introduce him very briefly as we go along. So Nate got me started in this whole CBD journey maybe a year or so ago, and he's one of the premier permaculture persons in the United States. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the different people because we've got too much other stuff to do. But one of the great honors in my life is that 2 summers ago, I married Nate and Jess in the peony garden at the Arb. So, lucky me. So here you are, Nate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. How about a little round of applause for Sandy? So yeah, it's really wonderful to be back here at Crazy Wisdom. This room is really special, full of good conversation, good energy, and I think what this panel has to share tonight is enriching. And I think we're all up here because we're passionate about this subject. So I can just dive right in. As Sandy's mentioned, my background is in permaculture. And I know we've got some permies in the room tonight, folks that are familiar with that. And I'm sure we have some people in the room that aren't as familiar with permaculture. And really, if I had to break permaculture down in its essence, it is an ecological design science. It's a way of working with nature to attain human needs without defeating nature, because we have some modern industrial systems in place that are unfortunately defeating nature. And permaculture was sort of initiated by a couple of white men in Australia in the 1970s, but the models are completely based on native and indigenous practices. And that's something we have to remember, is that there are people still around on planet Earth that have been living in balance with nature for thousands and thousands of years. And it's sort of us modern folks that have come along and said, we know better than nature, we can design better systems, and nature will just somehow miraculously pass over on top of us, and we'll be fine. And we just need to turn on the news these days to figure out that's not the case anymore. So permaculture is part of a movement of people that are passionate about sustainability. Permaculture has its roots in agriculture. The word is a portmanteau, permaculture meaning permanent agriculture, and it's about designing food systems that are based on natural ecosystems, primarily forest ecosystems. I believe that forests are some of the best classrooms that we have on planet Earth. I do a lot of work with K-12 schools, colleges, and universities. As part of the group that brought permaculture to the University of Michigan about 5 years ago. And we've seen it spread to a lot of different K-12 schools and colleges and universities, not just in the region, but throughout the United States. And so what we're seeing in this movement is it's about solutions. It's about solutions that are in balance with nature. Another sort of phrase that we could use is biomimicry. Bio meaning life, mimicry meaning to copy. So that's another big part of this, is how do we study nature in ways that we can implement and emulate in our lifestyle. And that runs the gambit from food, energy, water, building, transportation, and waste. So how can we emulate nature and copy nature's designs in the way that we do things? I think another phrase that might be important, and what I'm sort of hoping to give folks a little bit of a snapshot in my time to talk tonight, is this idea of agroecology. And of course, agro meaning agriculture, and ecology meaning nature. So how do we have systems that provide for us that are in harmony, in balance with nature? And really the story of humanity is the story of our relationship with nature, our relationship with how we grow our food, how we get our materials. And when we look at the history of hemp and cannabis, I firmly believe that we're talking about a keystone species. This is a species that is at or very near the top of importance when it comes to our relationship with nature. In terms of the history of humans and cannabis use, we can trace this back to at least 10,000 years ago. Folks in China have been using this plant for thousands and thousands of years. And as mentioned, native and indigenous folks have lived in symbiotic relationship with this plant for thousands and thousands of years. And to sort of parallel this with some of the more cutting edge science, and that's kind of what I hope to do in my time, is maybe introduce some of the concepts that these other folks might be talking about tonight. We have this idea of an endocannabinoid system in our body, which is literally a parallel nervous system that thrives on endocannabinoids, the compounds found in the hemp and cannabis plant. So I really mean that we have evolved symbiotically with this plant for thousands and thousands of years. To give you a little bit more of a contextualized modern snapshot about what us humans are doing in our relationship with hemp and cannabis over, say, the last 75 to 100 years. In the United States, for the first couple hundred years of our nation's existence, cannabis and hemp was ubiquitous. Farmers grew it all over the place. There's all kinds of wives' tales about if you owned a certain amount of acreage as a farmer in the United States, you had to devote a certain percentage of that towards hemp production, because it was such a beneficial crop in terms of rope, textiles, medicines, fibers, all kinds of food, bedding for animals, oils and things like that, as well as food for humans. So this is a plant with ubiquitous history with us, and it's sort of over the last 100 years that it's been demonized. And so agriculturally speaking, anthropologically speaking, in the United States, we get to an interesting time frame in the 1930s, when this plant really starts to become demonized and associated with all kinds of social ills and things like that. And I think it's really interesting that this is right around the time of the birth of industrial agriculture. Coming out of the beginnings of World War II, in this country we had an excess of petrochemicals, we had an excess of petroleum-based products. And smart people sitting in smart rooms decided that it would be a good idea to start to implement this excessive petroleum products into our agricultural stocks and into our farms and into our grazing fields as a way of keeping down pests, competitive plants, but also to really launch the Green Revolution. So we started getting away from small-scale, family-owned farms, which up until the 1930s, over 80% of Americans were involved in some form of agriculture or another. And we start to see in 1937 the Marijuana Tax Act, which really started to prohibit cannabis use, hemp growing, and things like that with the crackdown. And I find it interesting, this parallel with the start of industrial agriculture, because really what this gets into is our relationship with nature and how we treat nature, and primarily how we treat the soil. And cannabis, hemp, is a really wonderful plant for working with soil, for building soils, for being able to bioremediate, meaning heal and fix and draw out toxins in soils. So I'm trying to set the stage a little bit here that we have a very long history of being with this plant, of working with this plant. It's really over the last 75 years that we've lost connection with that. In terms of modern agriculture and sort of the awakening that has happened in the last 25 to 30 years with this back to the land movement that Ann Arbor was a big part of in the 1970s, but the transition back to organic agriculture. And really, if I had one core message for everyone today, sort of the essence of permaculture and agroecology and biomimicry is this is about transitioning away from monocultures and towards polycultures. And monocultures are a human construct, thinking that there's just one way to do business, right? And when it comes to agriculture, this concept has really caught on because we can go for a 5-minute drive outside of town and see thousands and thousands of acres of just one crop. A lot of times that's corn, soy, or wheat, right? And nowhere in nature are you going to find a monoculture. Nature loves biodiversity. Nature loves lots of different things working together, helping each other out, creating a full spectrum. And so these are the systems that we naturally evolve with, these biodiverse systems. And it's us smart humans that came along and said, we can just grow one crop, and we can spray that crop with all kinds of pesticides. And so we did this for a long time. But people started to realize that, whoa, we're not helping out our soil. It's estimated in the United States that we're losing around 2 billion tons of topsoil every year through erosion and agricultural practices. And very simply put, I can say that no soil, no people. It's argued that the top 6 inches of topsoil is what supports human existence on planet Earth. So our relationship with soil is really important. And so we're starting to see modern farmers and permaculturists really transition away from these industrial annual monocultures and towards perennial polycultures, forest systems, forest gardens, biodiverse crop systems, companion planting, and things like that. And hemp and cannabis plays a critical role in these companion relationships in terms of being able to establish diverse, strong, resilient ecosystems. I think what's interesting is that as we're switching back to this idea of polyculture, getting away from monoculture and towards polycultures, we see this idea cropping up in lots of other areas of our lives. In the health field, we're starting to realize that really what we want to go after is a biodiverse gut system, right? It used to be all about antibiotics. If there's something wrong with you, take this antibiotic. We'll knock out all the creepy crawlies that are inside of you. Well, now we're talking about probiotics. We actually want lots of we want to increase our microbial diversity inside of ourselves. And we're starting to realize that as humans, we're actually around 1 billion times more microbes than we are human cells. We are microbes. It's in our operating system to be biodiverse. And so this whole idea of as above, so below, we want polycultures in all of our systems. We want polycultures in the soil, we want polycultures inside of us. And as you're going to hear about tonight from some of these other expert panelists, when we get into the medicinal aspects of hemp and cannabis, really what we're starting to see a lot of promise is in these full spectrum extracts that take a lot of different pieces of the cannabis and hemp plant and combine them together. Because it's easy to find medicines out there that are just a sliver, a little tiny slice of one particular compound. But we're finding that this idea, this big transition back towards polyculture, back towards microbial diversity, that's our true nature, that's the essence of nature, and we can mimic that as humans. So maybe I'll just end real quick here with some of my personal research that we do. As Sandy mentioned, I'm the director of an organization called CHUAR, Permaculture Research and Education. And we focus on a lot of sustainability projects, but we were involved with the University of Michigan for a number of years looking at industrial hemp as a feedstock for 3D printing. And this was a really revolutionary idea at the time because as we've all heard about 3D printing, the promise of this is localized production out of lots of goods and services that we usually have to send far away for. And we're finding that the hemp plant, really pretty much anything that we can make from petroleum and plastics can be synthesized from this hemp plant. Really incredible compounds and lipids and binders and resins and polymers and things like that. So anything that we can make from petroleum and plastic nearly can be synthesized from the hemp plant. And so we were looking at hemp as a feedstock for being able to print materials, 3D printed materials. And this has huge ramifications if you can think about being able to transition our consumptive lifestyles into a more localized economy where production and consumption occurs a lot closer to home. Well, to make a long story short, we were working with the 3D printing lab for about 2 years to get this in place. And in 2015, the Farm Bill came down, and former President Barack Obama included in there the ability for state colleges and universities to start to grow and study industrial hemp. So we were all lined up at the University of Michigan. We had approval from the highest ups out at the Botanical Gardens. We had a bunch of PhDs on board who were ready to start studying this. And wouldn't you know it, the good state of Michigan, they tacked on a little rider in there requiring anybody that wanted to do this research to obtain a controlled substances permit from the DEA. And poof, there went our PhDs. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. So our research is on hold. But other people are thinking about this. And in the states that have legalized industrial hemp, they're already light years ahead of us here in Michigan in terms of what they're doing with this plant and sort of the advantages that they're already reaping in those communities. So I'm here to say that the proof is in the pudding. We know that this plant has a lot of solutions for problems that we desperately need, not just on planet Earth, but here in Michigan. And there's a lot of smart people starting to think about this. It's a complex subject, it's a complex plant, but what I found is that as we start to dig into this, the solutions are embarrassingly simple. Embarrassingly simple. And it's a matter of looking to nature, for example, and copying those examples. And that's something we can all do in our lives. So I'll pass it on to the next speaker. Thank you all so much for coming.
Maybe we need another salon next year on local communities, local organizations, and how so many people are coming, local farms are coming together to do this. So Mark is out of Silicon Valley and out of Sunward Co-housing and is doing all sorts of great things there. And he's going to talk about the history of CBD and then turn it over to Lisa in about 8 minutes. So.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm originally from Michigan, and I actually did go to school at U of M here back in the 70s before moving out to Silicon Valley when the microcomputers started showing up. My idea was networking them, but that's another story, another salon. I love what Nate was talking about in so many areas. I'm also a permaculturist. I've been practicing for 16 years. I agree with everything Nate said about the systems, the remediation capabilities of hemp for agricultural lack of diversity, and perennial polycultures and companion planting. Those are all vital as well. Like he mentioned also, Nate, that about 9/10 of the genetics in your body are not human, right? All of the microorganisms, bacteria, and all those other little creatures are not human, but we're the host of such a diverse perennial polyculture by the millisecond. So how that works is we're mimicking natural systems in our bodies, and we're just as unhealthy as some of our agricultural expressions. Now you look at a plant that naturally attaches to most cells in the body. Most cells in the body have two receptor sites, referred to as CB1 and CB2. CB1 in particular on neurons, mostly in the brain. Also, there are neurons elsewhere, so CB1 is on those as well. And these cannabinoids that grow in hemp and other forms of cannabis attach to these receptor sites. Now, I have a very personal story. I didn't study any of this until my mom came down with Alzheimer's. And I was the only caregiver that was going to be able to take care of her. The rest of her family could not manage it at all. And it became a full-time, 24/7 thing for about 6 years. She was getting into the late stages. She got kicked out of her third and final bridge group. I played rummy with her, the simplest card game. She still knew how to play, but only on her best days. And you know what those are. You're familiar with the disease, that they know who you are. Instead of 75% arguing with a stranger. And so I played this game with her, the simple game, and she won 1 game out of 100 over a 2-year period. I started looking into some more research about how this could be turned around with some natural systems. And I found some cannabinoid research, mostly out of Israel and Germany, Spain, and Sweden. And it was illegal to research it here. But I found Project CBD, and I started researching through there. They had links to papers and clinical studies, and I said, oh, a couple of these look really good. It would at least help with some of her pain and maybe help her sleep well. I wasn't interested in getting her high, so I wasn't focused on THC as the primary psychoactive cannabinoid. So I was looking at CBD and another couple of them, one CBG and CBGA. Now, there's not much market for it yet. There's a market for CBD now. We've heard this in medical marijuana around the world. Dr. Sanjay Gupta did a CNN special, and then a few short documentaries called Weed, and it kind of went national, and now we've seen the legalization almost of medical marijuana, focusing mostly on CBD, which happens to reduce rare forms of epilepsy and other neurological disorders. Well, I wanted something more than what CBD offered. I heard a rumor through one paper that was written that said, we think CBG or CBGA might be neurogenic. I said, well, that's for me, because I've got a mother that was a hairdresser for 71 years and was no longer mobile, was bedridden, had started losing control of her bowels and bladder, and wasn't being able to play cards anymore, stopped dancing twice a week, you know. Well, in the first week of giving her CBGA, CBG, and CBD, some of it from a hemp plant that was not heated, so it had some CBGA, and the other from a high CBD strain of cannabis that had a full spectrum of the cannabinoids but very low in THC. She never forgot who I was again. That started the first week. She started winning at Rummy. She won the next 67 out of 100 games. After 4 months, I asked her if she wanted to go back and play bridge because she's now mobile. She's walking and not falling. She regained control of her bowels and bladder and went back to playing bridge. I had to talk them into letting her back in because the last time she caused a real ruckus and fell. She placed in the top 5 3 times among 10 tables in the next 7 months. I was measuring a bunch of other cognitive function as well. I measured 5 forms of cognitive function. I measured short-term, mid-term, long-term memory, social skills, organization skills, appropriate emotional response to a situation, you know what that's like, general response time, and of course, physical motor coordination skills. By my estimation, she recovered over 90% from late-stage Alzheimer's using a plant that is kind of illegal. And of no medicinal values, that's why it's still on Schedule 1, and why you need a permit from the DEA. I would still, Kentucky signed the same law. There was a carve-out in the Farm Bill saying we could do research on hemp back in 2014, actually, in the fall. And a lot of states signed that if your state wants to do research on hemp, college, university can apply for a permit and you could grow it. Kentucky signed their same law, same time we did here in Michigan, but they're growing almost 13,000 acres in their 3rd year, half of which is for CBD. They don't know about CBG and CBGA yet, but that's what I'm hoping to prove in the next year, is that it actually could be neurogenic, and that will have impact on ALS, MS, Parkinson's, and a whole host of neuropathies, and maybe even closed head injuries, spinal cord injuries. This is all hypothetical, and yes, this is an anecdotal one-off, right? But I was very careful to get her on a really good diet, get her off of all her other medications, and there was no real improvement on just doing that, even though I think that helped a great deal, because it wasn't battling these other things that typically have side effects. This did not have any side effects, except I got my mom back, who stopped me in the middle of the living room one day and said, "Mark, I'm doing so much better now, you should go back to work. Maybe you'll find another girl." And so that's why I'm so passionate about this. And I'm working with this group here in raising awareness and maybe, just maybe, getting a hemp research program, because I've got a whole bunch of other uses in energy systems and other things that I can use hemp for. So I'm really glad that I'm here tonight.
So Nate, a good friend, introduced me to Mark, who introduced me to Teddy Donahue at the end there, who will be our next speaker. And because of that good sequence, it's why we're here right now. So Teddy and Kent own Island Farm, which is out on Waters Road, which is where the CBD that I consume comes from. And yeah, there's a whole lot going on there, and I'll turn this over to Teddy to talk about what they're doing out there, and it's great stuff.
Hello, can you hear me? Everyone's good. All right. So my name's Teddy Donahue. I got involved with Kent again later here in life about 3 years ago, and we helped a customer friend build a couple of high-end grow houses, all indoors, climate controlled, the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. And we were looking at what was going on in the cannabis industry, and having been a guerrilla grower since 1979, on and off. That means I grew, obviously, illegally, wherever, and grew up in the cannabis culture of the late 70s, early 80s. So after building these structures, we went, you know, these guys and these girls in the cannabis industry are growing all this product with synthetic nutrients, they're using hydroponics, they're using all this lighting, this heating, air conditioning, cooling, all these things that consume an incredible amount of BTUs. So we decided to look at it a little bit deeper, and lo and behold, yeah, all this stuff is very poisonous. There's a lot of chemicals that are in it. It's a bioaccumulator plant, so those pesticides, miticides, those toxins that are PGRs, which are plant growth regulators, the nutrients that they're using all stay in the plant. They never leave. They'll tell you these things that, oh, we flush our plants for the last 2 weeks, and it gets rid of all these evil toxins. Not true. If you've ever taken a biology class, you'll know that that's just not true. So, after looking at this, also we found out, guess what? This industry is got the highest carbon footprint of any industry on the planet. The highest carbon footprint, more than a coal-fired power plant. Pretty crazy. So we decided to go down this road of let's grow real cannabis that's really good for people, and it doesn't have any of these toxins in it. Let's do it outside. Like everybody else, we had to do some things indoors, but we moved our operation outside into greenhouses, and most notably these structures are hugel culture projects, which are a form of permaculture and polyculture, which is what Nate talked about. So this is a method that was developed in Europe hundreds of years ago. So we're going down this road, and lo and behold, we find out that we've actually got this really unique cannabis variety that's extremely high, extremely rich in CBD and very low in THC. So along all this research that we're doing all the time, we're getting in contact with other people here, finding out what CBD can really do if it isn't a full spectrum extract, or it's still in the flower itself, buds, nuts, whatever you want to call it. So we've got a really unique species of, or variety of cannabis, and we've been making products that are elixir-based, which is in fractionated coconut oil, alcohol-based tinctures, unrefined coconut oil. We put it in capsules, we put it in honey, we offer it as the regular flower as well. So we've developed this network with our patients and colleagues now that involve doctors. There's other doctors that are involved with this project with us as well. So in a nutshell, we've gone from being able to build these structures for the regular cannabis industry and going into a sustainable system of what is known as Google culture. And we're now getting this product out there to people that really want a product that doesn't have any synthetics in it, that doesn't have any poisons in it, that's not going to harm you, that's going to actually help you or help the majority of people that are using it. So, oh man, kind of long-winded here, but anyhow, we're about making this a sustainable product, not going down the route of the commercialization of cannabis, because that is just a different arena, and we all know that monocultures don't work, they're not sustainable. So we're in the belief that in the world of sustainability and farming and growth and our society, we need to be in this closer hub of activity that's in our region, and the people that we're associated with here. So we're all about the sustainable aspect of it and networking, getting the clean product out to people that actually really want it, as opposed to what else is available out there. So we found out that the full spectrum extracts are much more effective than any of the single molecule extracts. People have these distillates that are just simply CBD. CBD on its own is just fine and dandy, but if you have CBD that comes out of the cannabis plant that has a really nice terpene profile, those terpenes are actually what seriously enhance that CBD. So it's not just as simple as, oh, we're using THC or we're using CBD to treat this. It's just not that simple. That goes down the route of being pharmaceutical, and that doesn't work out so great. So anyhow, we're all about the sustainability of CBD. We hold educational seminars at our farm for people that want to know more about it and want to know more about the difference between what we do. There's other growers out there that do this. There's a very large movement in the Pacific Northwest and in California, which I'm not going to include in the Pacific Northwest, but it's out there, it's available, and we're becoming a little more intimate with some of those people and those farms out there. So hopefully we can keep pushing this forward and stay progressive with it. That's all I've got. You got a question?
You used the term something culture. What is that?
Google culture.
Google?
Google. One person at a time. Thank you very much.
No, it's polyculture.
No, Google. H-U-G-L-K-U-L-T. Yeah, Google culture. Google. Like who's and who go.
Spell it again.
H-U-G-E-L-K-U-L-T-U-R-E. Google culture. Simple Google click away. But I'm going to pass this back to Sandy. I'll get the next person, and then we can talk afterwards more in depth.
It's such a vast resource of material about about hemp and all of its great qualities, including CBD. So let me give you 3 sites to write down in case you really want to research this further. One is called Project CBD, and this is the website that in fact is kind of the conglomeration for all the news and articles and latest developments, and et cetera, about CBD. And in fact, by one of those really nice synchronicities of life, one of Bill's old friends, Lee Martin Lee, is a good friend, the 2 of them. And Martin actually started the project CBD. So look that up, and there's a huge amount of material. And in fact, Martin might be coming to the Ann Arbor area next winter, in which case we'll get some other good stuff going. Researching Your Health has occasionally some good articles about CBD, and Evolver.net is another good one. And if you just do a Google, you'll find all kinds of stuff. Dr. Lisa Profera will be our next speaker, and then she'll be followed by another doctor. And again, that small Ann Arbor town that we have, when Lisa and I met, there was some kind of recognition, but not totally there. And then we figured out, actually my wife did, that Lisa figured it out too independently, that she was our kid's pediatrician. And in fact, our daughter liked Lisa so much, our younger daughter, Eliza, that even when she was away in college in Seattle, whenever she'd come home, okay, I need to get a checkup, I'll go to Lisa. So here we are. Lisa, yes.
Thank you, Cindy. Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Profera. I came to Michigan to do my pediatric residency at University of Michigan in 1989 and practiced as a traditional allopathic pediatrician for 25 years and came to a point where I kind of wanted a better balance in my life, got a little tired of the bureaucracy, the broken healthcare system that we have, and decided with the help of encouragement of my husband, who's sitting back there, to make a change for myself and make a change for my patients and what I do. So I did a little soul searching and developed a practice revolving around the things that I love, which is looking better and feeling better. So I developed my practice. It's called ProJuVu-MD, which stands for Professional Rejuvenation Services Centered Around You, the patient. So I wanted to come back to the art of medicine, spending more time with patients instead of time staring into a computer and checking off boxes so insurance companies would pay me. So lo and behold, I went back and really had to think about what I was passionate about and did a lot of re-education and pretty much looked with more open eyes and thought out of the box and tried to pick things from aspects of aesthetics and lifestyle medicine that I thought had efficacy and that were certainly not going to harm people and that were going to help people. So one of the things that I've done was just do a lot of extensive reading. The first time I heard about CBD was actually through National Geographic, June 2015. So I'm reading this article, and it discussed a lot of things, but the part of the article that caught my attention as a pediatrician was the story of this young girl who had intractable seizures. And the only thing that helped her, she had an unusual disorder called Dravet syndrome. I actually did take care of a patient like that as well when I was in training. So basically, the only thing that worked to help control this child's seizures was CBD oil. And the family ended up having to move to Colorado to go to the Stanley brothers to get Charlotte Figgy's mix, which is more CBD than THC. And their daughter came back. She was a twin, so they had a comparison, of the one child who was normal, and they had watched this other child, just seize and have all these problems and developmental delay. So that kind of made an impression on me. I was, when I was a resident, I always seemed to get the kid that was seizing out of control in the ICU, stayed up many, many nights. So it definitely made an impression on me. So it's like I got to learn a little bit more about this. And that's when I started getting into whole plant medicine and learning about the endocannabinoid system and the entourage effect. And small town Ann Arbor, we've been friends with Kent for many, many years. And he introduced me to Ted, and we got accustomed to what they were doing out at Island Farms. And he asked me to do some patient consults. And I said, sure, I would love to help people with this. So mostly I see patients, I'm not their primary care physician, I'm adjunctive, obviously. And I help people with these products. And it's wonderful because most of these people are not drug seeking. They really want to control their chronic pain or their chronic muscle spasms or their PTSD or whatever, and lead a normal life. They want to be functional. They don't want to be hooked on narcotics. They don't want to be zoned out. They want to be able to drive. They want to be present for their families. They want to work. Or if they're retired, they want to play with their grandchildren. They want to have a normal life. And none of the available pharmaceuticals can do that for them, or they're getting such horrible side effects from the pharmaceuticals that's impacting their life. So I've been doing consults for about a little over a year. So we did a little 1-year follow-up for several patients, and I asked them, well, how has this changed your life? And everybody's reported a positive impact. It's drastically reduced their pain levels, helped their functionality, helped them at work, at home, in their jobs, helped their sleep, helps their anxiety, and many, many more things. Creativity for people who are more artistic or trying to do those kinds of things in their life. So I feel really good about that. So it's really nice, a nice adjunct to what I do. I also am interested in essential oils, and the whole concept of terpenes and whole plant medicine and the entourage effect just goes hand in hand with all of these things. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll turn it back to you, Sam.
One of the really promising developments is the number of doctors who are convinced now, and the number of other doctors are really opening their ears and minds to what's happening. So that I think when some of the more tricky politicians are trying to do away with CBD and stuff like that, partly because they're being paid so many campaign donations by the people who are threatened by this, like Big Pharma and stuff like that. But the more that this is happening in the country, including in academic situations, the better off we're all going to be in the coming health revolution. I know that several doctors at U of M are doing research now to some degree on CBD, so this is really encouraging. And there's research going on in Chicago as well. So Anthony King drove over today to be part of this panel and is actually driving back tonight, though he could spend the night with us if he wanted. And is a dentist there and has become involved with CBD and is actually carrying out pretty rigorous studies as to what works and why and when and great stuff like that. And I forget whether you got whether your origin in CBD came through the military or that came afterwards. Not a bit. Okay. Anyway, so here's Anthony King from Chicago.
Well, it's really difficult, again, I'm sorry, my name is Dr. King. It's really difficult to be last amongst all these wonderful speakers.
Hold the microphone a little closer.
All right, I'm going to attempt to speak with you, but I'm going to ask everyone to just give me one piece of information. I would like to know, has anyone ever heard the idea that marijuana is a gateway drug? Just to raise a hand. You've all heard that. Okay, well, we have a great starting point. Marijuana is a gateway, but I'm not going to say it's a gateway to anything just yet. I want to disprove that first myth that I just stated. The one thing that I want to point out is when I graduated dental school back in '96, we were taught pharmacology and certainly have a license where I can write prescriptions and I can certainly monitor things, and I had the opportunity to go through different medical histories, different charts, and ask people a lot of questions. But that wasn't that important to me 20 years ago. I was really able to write prescriptions, Schedule II drugs. I could write prescriptions for narcotics. I could write prescriptions for opioids, obviously. And what I started to realize was that people liked it. Oh, great. Well, I wonder why they liked it, and I started finding out that they liked it for reasons other than pain management. Now, I think that drugs play a really important part in our life. I can't imagine what someone would do if they had a bacterial infection and they couldn't use antibiotics. I certainly can't realize what someone would do if they had pain and we could prescribe medications, but particularly for trauma type of things as opposed to chronic. Well, there was no distinction made for me when I was in dental school, nor when I started practicing. So basically, chronic things also meant pain management to me, and certainly I wrote enough prescriptions to realize that what I was doing was contributing to the actual problem that we have today, which is opioid crisis. So I prescribed medications, patients came back, sometimes they wanted more and other times they wanted less, but I started saying to myself, I'm in pain, I wonder what this feels like. So I subjected myself to the exact same thing that most of those patients, they were asking for something to relieve a problem, or pain if you will. And my problem was my back, so I thought, how could I function on a daily basis and still practice dentistry? So I started utilizing pain medication, and it worked. I knew how much I could take to be effective. I knew how much I shouldn't take to be non-effective. So I stayed in the effective realm all the time. With the exception of going on vacation, I didn't take medication, but as my wife can attest, that's when everything broke down. That's when I needed to see the chiropractor. That's when I needed to get massages and acupuncture and all those other things. Well, I thought, wait a minute, well, I'm supposed to be dealing with pain, and as I'm prescribing these horrible medications that have horrible side effects, mind you, how am I supposed to deal with chronic pain? So, in my mind, great, there's marijuana. So I started utilizing marijuana. But the medicinal aspect of it wasn't apparent to me at the time. So I would take it, and I thought, well, I can't function on a daily basis. I'll get up 3 hours before I start working, and I'll function that way, and it'll help my back feel better. And then I can see all my patients. At the end of the day, I'll go right back to where I came from. I'm smoking again. Well, that can go over well, but again, you can't be considered a pothead all day. Now, that won't work, especially if you're a doctor and you're trying to provide valuable services to people and your patients. So, patient walks into my office who happened to know Teddy and said to me, listen, you've got to try CBDs. Well, other patients have said something to me about CBDs, but remember we said that marijuana was a gateway drug. Well, I kind of knew about the marijuana and how it was affecting me, but I didn't know what the CBD stuff was. No one explained to me that you could separate from the plant, you can get it from hemp. I didn't understand that, but nevertheless, I tried it. That was November 11th, 2016. I have not woken up with a backache since, okay? And I mean that with all sincerity. So I decided, okay, I need to learn more about this. I don't understand what's going on. I didn't have access to Teddy just yet, but I knew friends in California, I knew friends in Colorado, I knew friends in Arizona, and then I decided I need to meet Teddy because what everyone else was trying to present to me was more of a pharmacological aspect. How can we make a lot of money doing this? Well, wait a minute, this is really important because, in my opinion, patients should have access to this, and I did finally get a chance to meet Teddy. Well, I asked Teddy a number of things because I did not understand what CBDs were, and I certainly didn't understand what THC, except for I knew that it altered my brain. But what is this thing called the endocannabinoid system, and how can I learn more about it? Well, Teddy gave me enough information to feel that I knew something, but there was another point of information. I would go to projectcbd.org, as everyone already mentioned, and they have a wealth of information for you to learn many things. Well, I started utilizing this, and I said, wait a minute, if this does such a wonderful job with my bag, I wonder what it does for other things. And because I'm a doctor, I have access to patients, I can start looking at their ailments, I can start looking at their problems, and I wanted to see how this product could help them with their problems. I started utilizing tinctures, and then we went to the elixir, and I noticed one important thing. If I flossed, and I switched with that same tincture before I swallowed it, my pain was gone. Interesting. So if that be the case, is there any other way we could utilize this? Well, I don't think it's wonderful for trauma, but I knew chronic things were certainly something that we could address. So I had the opportunity to make and work with the patient, and I said to her, listen, I'm not prescribing you any anti-inflammatories. I'm only going to give you a shot to deal with the actual trauma of the actual removal of the tooth. But I wanted to see how this would play out in the next couple of days. I wanted to know if she craved for Motrin, if she craved for opioids, and none of those things happened. So I thought, wow, this is wonderful. I think I got in touch with Teddy at that point, and I told him, hey, listen, this is what I tried, this is what I want to do. So I started asking other patients, is there another way you can utilize this product? What's going on in your family history? What's going on with you? Are you experiencing any chronic pain? And I started noticing there were so many people out there with arthritis, with Parkinson's disease. I've got a patient right now with lung cancer, medulloblastoma, with all these different ailments, and they were just looking for something in a holistic way of dealing with their problems. I started deciding, hey, maybe if I share this with this patient, they'll learn something. Maybe if I share this with their parent, they'll learn something. And lo and behold, the testimonies that I've gotten from most of these patients has been unbelievable. So I'm completely convinced that what we're doing with this group and explaining to people how important CBDs are is a wonderful thing. Now, originally I said people had heard the thing that marijuana was a gateway, correct? Well, it is. I think it's a gateway to discovery. Because once you discover what it can do for you, the sky's the limit. The ailments that you have, the problems that you have, medication only creates another problem. Now, mind you, marijuana currently is a Schedule I drug, which absolutely makes no sense to me. It's saying that it has the same medicinal or non-medicinal properties as heroin. But we can write prescription drugs, Schedule II, and those drugs are very habit-forming, they are very addicting, and they are causing a lot of problems, hence the opioid crisis today. So, in my opinion, the research that I'm accomplishing currently is to see if utilizing CBDs in the oral cavity, because we're already placing them in there anyway, can do something to decrease their incidence of periodontal disease in the country. It's been noted that the country currently has over 50% of adults with active periodontal disease. That means 50% of us in here may have some form of periodontal disease, if not gingivitis. Well, the whole point of the CBD is for us to catch it before it becomes a problem. And the description of a problem to me is this. We all have a level of biofilm in our mouth, okay? But if we can break that down through brushing and flossing, our normal day-to-day habits, we should be able to prevent that from turning into plaque. Once plaque accumulates on our teeth, it becomes a little bit more cumbersome, but also is visible. So now you have a visual indication that something is on your teeth and it shouldn't be there. But some people sort of let that go by the wayside, and it hardens up and it becomes tartar. Now we have another problem. You can't convince most of these people at that time to go see the dentist, and it's a little bit more difficult, but once we develop tartar, which is a calcified layer of plaque on your teeth, now we're starting to deal with periodontal disease. Periodontal disease. What does that mean? We're losing teeth, people. So the periodontium that's supposed to support your teeth is now being compromised completely because of the host response to get rid of that biofilm that we're not doing on a daily basis. Some of us are, but some of us aren't. Well, if 50% have periodontal disease, that's saying that 50% of us are not doing such a great job. That says 75% of us earlier in life didn't lay the groundwork for keeping up with oral hygiene. Well, if that be the case, our product, and I'm working with Teddy here, is goal is to create a mouth rinse. And that mouth rinse, you can just add that to your day-to-day schedule of brushing your teeth and possibly flossing your teeth, because that's important, but you can't really get people to do that. If we can get them to use our mouth rinse, I think that we can eliminate, not completely, but we can decrease that number of periodontal disease that's prevalent in our country today. Now, with that stated, again, I said marijuana is a gateway, but again, it's a gateway to discovery, because if you discover the medicinal properties associated with it, you will not find yourself a victim to Big Pharma. Thank you.
So the one little tidbit I've got to add to what everybody's said here about CBD is it's not just CBD. It's not a CBD, which is cannabidiol. It's not that as a single molecule. It's actually in a full spectrum extract. It's everything else in that plant that goes along with that. It's not a single compound situation / cure. So when we're saying CBD, what we're really should be saying is CBD in a full plant extract. So there you go.
Polyculture.
Yes.
Yeah, polyculture basically.
I think this is, I'm not sure how common knowledge it is. The CBD is in fact got just a small portion of the psychoactive THC. It's around 1%. So it's not something that can make you all spacey. So this is terrific. Thank you so much, you guys. And we're pretty much on schedule. And now we get to one of the really best parts of a salon, which is you all get to talk and ask questions and enter into the scheme of things. So I think his hand was up.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and coming here and educating us. As a quick question, what would be an average dose that you see in your practice when your patient comes in either with lower pain or a pediatric patient in the whole full extract of CBD? What would be a good milligram initial dose for CBDs for patients?
My answer is, with our product that we have here, the average dose for an individual is about 8 milligrams of our product, 8 milligrams of CBD. And that's, again, in any of the forms of our extract. And that's a starting point, and that works for about 80% of the people. There are some people that need to go up as high as 20 milligrams per dose, but that's pretty much a topper right there.
And how often during the day? I'm sorry to
Typically, it's 1 to 2 times a day. There are patients that need it 4 or 5 times. It depends on what it is they're treating. Microdosing is the key here. More small, very small doses versus big, large doses. So that's how it works in my experience.
Okay. Well, in my experience, based on how I used it, I find it really difficult to explain to patients milligrams. I don't do all that. I suggest a half a dropper under your tongue in the morning and at night, and also. All right, well, so you just told us 10 milligrams. I didn't know the milligrams. I just know what I tell people because that's how I use it. And 10 milligrams is what you just said, but I use it 2 or 3 times a day. That's how I tell my patients. Also, other point that I want to make as far as milligram dosage is concerned, over-the-counter medication, 200 milligrams of ibuprofen, I'm going to use that because it's easier to talk about. People buy that and use that for pain management. But if you go to a doctor and you get it prescribed, it's 800 milligrams. So it all depends on what you think. If you want to take 200 and you feel comfortable and you don't want to overdo it, per se, that's fine. But 800 milligrams seems to work particularly well with ibuprofen 4 times a day. So if you give someone the maximum effective dose versus the low dose, it all depends on the individual.
Yeah, just another thing about dosage and method of administration. So, there's different ways to administer this, and the patient has to feel comfortable and pretty much chooses the mode of administration. I like the sublingual administration because then it bypasses the GI tract and the liver, and you get your max absorption through the oral mucosa that way. But if you're swallowing a capsule, it's going into the stomach acid, going into your gut, if you have an unhealthy gut to begin with, you're not going to get good absorption that way. But some people don't want to use other modes of administration. Obviously, smoking or vaping is going to go right into your lungs and right into your bloodstream that way. And then you can also do rectal and vaginal administration as well. It is individualized. You start low and you can titrate up to get your effect. We really do rely on the patient's input. But we do that in medicine anyway. I mean, when I was prescribing Ritalin and Adderall for kids, first of all, I don't prescribe CBD for kids. I want to make that clear. But when you're doing that with kids, you're like, okay, well, what did the teacher say? What do you notice at home? Maybe we should go up on the dose. So there's really no magic dose, one size fits all. It's very individualized.
Yeah, I have about 12 people who are consuming CBD that I've told about and referenced and stuff like that. And it really varies. And they test it out themselves, and some people are there's a dropper, and what I do is I fill the dropper about 3/4 or go like that, and I found that twice a day, more like 3/4, is better for me, and it's not better for other people. So you find what your body's telling you about what's really going to work really well. This fellow is next.
Two things come to mind. Very interested in the mouthwash, the rinse you talked about. Want to know more about that? Have you thought about a floss? And item 2 would be, can you describe the different CBs? You talked about CBD, CBGA, CBG. Can you describe those to us?
Well, the difference, particularly with ones that I've researched for my mom, I found out that CBGA was the first cannabinoid formed in the cannabis plant. It gets converted into all the other cannabinoids. So it acts as a precursor and has some kind of stem cell function for the rest of the cannabinoids. That's why I have a hunch based on just one research paper so far that I found that it might be neurogenic. When it attaches to CB1, if the environmental conditions are appropriate, like something is in the neighborhood that can act on that neuron to form what's needed for that neuron, CBGA could be that element that the cell lets in and says, oh, I need to take on this form of a neuron. That doesn't show up very much anymore. As a matter of fact, when I was treating my mom, CBGA was only available in hemp. That was being used for CBD, but in the raw form, and especially a hemp plant that was harvested early, it wasn't converted to CBDA, which is the acid form of CBD. So getting that original, that precursor, was important. And I mean, she went from not being able to walk to dancing twice a week and playing over 900 holes of miniature golf. After 71 years as a hairdresser with all those chemicals, she had to have some neurological improvement. It's not just plaque scrubbing of the neurons, right? So that's why I'm so on about the high potential of CBG. There are many other cannabinoids, and as Teddy referred to, and Nate as well, as polyculture. They do work together, particularly the terpenes, as Teddy mentioned. Those are what are called secondary metabolites. They allow these things to be metabolized in the body. So they're included. You don't want to buy an isolate of CBGA. You don't want to buy an isolate of CBD. You want to get something that has the broad spectrum, including these terpenes or secondary metabolites.
Right. I mean, if you were buying an isolate, you would be basically doing what the pharmaceutical company does now, which is ignore the entourage effect. That's why Marinol doesn't work, and that's why we are all into the whole plant medicine. So.
Cool. As far as the oral cavity is concerned, We do find that there are CB2 receptors in our oral cavity, particularly next to our tonsils and as part of that lymphatics. So CBD in and of itself, it has the antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and antibacterial effects that I need for our mouth rinse. So the terpene profile that's with Island Farms CBD seems to work very well for us. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, what about the floss?
Well, you know what, that's a great idea. The only problem I'd have with that is putting it into how would I get into a solid form and leave it there? That would be a problem I have.
I'm kind of very new to this whole scene. My husband was recently diagnosed with glioblastoma. It's glioblastoma, it's brain cancer. So we've been really looking into a lot of different options. He's 48 years old. He's done radiation, chemo, he's had 2 craniotomies. He's doing very well. He's on immunotherapy trial here at the U. But my question is we've been getting so much information about CBD oil, talked to local people here in the community that are very, very knowledgeable about the subject. I've had people come up to me and say, here's what he needs to be doing, this is really promising, and I ride this line between getting really excited about it and terrified of it. So is there, and I know, and it's also hard to find research that suggests that, I understand that the CBD and the THC work in different ways. One's to inhibit tumor growth and the other is to actually kind of attack it. So I'm trying to gain a lot of information about this, and so it's really nice to everybody that I've spoken with here in town that is in that field has been wonderful, and have felt like it's not just a bunch of people that are out smoking weed. It's just like I had this weird idea of what it was going to be like, and it's been everything but that. And so having this panel up in front of me that's very professional and very encouraging is awesome. But I would love to know if there's any new research out there that suggests that this could be a helpful thing for him if and when the time comes. If the immunotherapy stops doing what they hope it's doing.
There's a lot of anecdotal information on this. There's some true research information that's come out of Spain and Israel on this subject. Again, the first place to go to is projectcbd.org. Do that research. We've been only doing this a short time, so we have a limited amount of patient population interaction. What we do know with our CBD product and our THC products that can go hand in hand together is that it always provides greater well-being for who's taking it. We don't all last forever. There's always these transition moments where eventually we expire, etc. However, CBD, THC can help just about everybody have greater well-being. And who doesn't want greater well-being? No matter what it is. And if it's not going to hurt you, it's only going to help you. It seems like a no-brainer to me. So I'll pass this on to anybody else that's want to talk about what you think about it.
All right. You said, what was the name of it?
It's called glioblastoma.
Glioblastoma, okay. Well, I have a patient who has a medullary.
John McCain. John McCain has it too.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well,
So I have a patient
it's a
that
good
has a
reference.
medulloblastoma, and 3 years old, finished the first round of chemo, and parents didn't want to send her through chemo anymore. They were pretty despondent. They had done a lot of research, and as a patient, he came to me and asked me a question. I'm like, wow, wait a minute. You've got to try this product. So that was about maybe a month and a half ago, and they did not go back to the second round of chemo. She's walking around, she's running, her speech has improved, and the parents have nothing to say but great things for Teddy, number one, because he's the one with this product, if you will. They've come up with a wonderful way of extracting and providing us with this. I can't see a negative effect, I can't see a bad effect. Even if you drink a bottle a day, I just don't see anything that could go wrong. That's all. Oh, and another patient of mine, I'm sorry, lung cancer. I didn't know what his problem was. His daughter came to me and asked for it, and I didn't know what was going on. And they came to me August the 12th of this year. I sold them a bottle, sold them another bottle, and they showed me the result of their father, who was laying dead, lung cancer in his late 60s. He's sitting up now, he's walking around, and he's happy. So, I think
a bottle of what?
CBDs. So he's been taking CBDs. I can show you his testimony. So he's taking 3 doses of CBD daily, and at nighttime a dose of THC. So that's been sort of the magic formula for him. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a different magic formula, but I'm sure the entourage effect of the THC and CBD will be beneficial.
So you write a script and they go pick it up somewhere?
No,
or you
not at all. I
buy
have it. I
You
just
do.
have access to
You
it.
get it from them.
That is correct.
And it's all legal.
Well, I'm not going to use the word legal or illegal, but if you can go to Whole Foods and get a similar product, there's nothing illegal about it. So they haven't said it's illegal just yet. So if they don't say it, I'm not going to promote it that way.
Wise.
All right. I haven't said it. I'm not promoting
I'll
it
just-
that way.
I'll just interject quickly. I mean, as a physician, we take an oath to do no harm. So everything that I recommend and do in my practice goes with that premise in mind, of course. So as a biochem major and a physician, I want to research everything thoroughly, understand how it works for people, and I can't see a downside for the CBD. And then there are other terpenes and other essential oils that also have very beneficial effects for our cellular health, if you want to use politically correct FDA language. There are other studies on things that I would put together in a cocktail and try, and it would be something that I would feel would do no harm.
And I'm going to loop this back to what Nate said in the beginning about our food, the quality of our food. Not the quantity, the quality. I think we're going to be making a big shift in that in the next few years. But I had a neighbor when I was working on a permaculture design up in the middle of Michigan, the Lower Peninsula, and she had stage 4 lung cancer. She was 36 years old, had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, was on Medicaid, and really had no help. She had breast cancer 5 years earlier and had started chemo and radiation, and it went into remission, but it showed up 5 years later as lung cancer and progressed quite rapidly. She could not walk up the stairs. She was starting to cough up blood, and she didn't want to take THC because she had these children. But I got her a caregiver. I got a caregiver card for her, a patient card in Michigan, and I started giving her concentrates of CBD. And if the pain got bad or she needed help sleeping, I mixed in a higher batch with THC. That was going to bed. Her marker count went up the first month for lung cancer. It went from 38 to 42, I think her numbers were. But then, the next month, it had dropped to 26. And in 6 months, it was gone. And I just talked to her the other day. She's still doing fine, and her kids are doing really good at teaching.
So you're a care provider that people hire?
Yeah, well, in Michigan, you're allowed 5 patients as a caregiver. You can grow 12 plants per patient. That caregiver law stays in effect even though we have a new facilities law that can be applied for in December 15th, I believe. But that caregiver law will be in effect. It's actually part of the Constitution because of a referendum, right?
Yes, it was a referendum in 2008, so that's part of the state constitution. Current caregiver system here in Michigan is not going away. It's not being 100% replaced by the new commercial rules and laws. The current medical marijuana program is still fully intact. And again, if it's done correctly, like what we're doing here, it's a sustainable network, it's a sustainable program, it's a sustainable farm. It's almost totally closed loop with what we do at our farm. And the other people that we're involved with that also grow similarly and have a similar caregiver network, patient network. So it's organic, it's not a pharmaceutical company. We're not going to save the planet. What we can do is we can help educate people so that they can have better well-being. This spreads far enough, which there's many farms that do this. In the giant picture, it's about less than 1% of the cannabis growers in America do what we do. So, yeah, that's a whole nother political ball of wax there.
Right now, you're not.
Yeah.
What is the experience around 4 different health issues? 1, weight management, type 2 or type 1 diabetes, hypertension, and fibromyalgia.
Inflammation. Inflammation is the root of all evil. And cancer is pretty much the penultimate expression of inflammation gone wild. So if you can get a hold of inflammation in your body. So acute inflammation, chronic inflammation, right? You cut yourself, you need an inflammatory process to get the proper cells in there to clean up, kill bacteria, and repair. And then it's done, and then inflammation should get turned off. But we have this thing called chronic inflammation, which is what we see in metabolic syndrome, which is high cholesterol, obesity, hypertension, blah blah blah, and then all of the autoimmune disease and the chronic inflammatory diseases, and pretty much every other commercial when you watch the news talks about drugs that end in MAB, which are basically poisons, that help fight inflammation. And why is the inflammatory process not being turned off in our bodies? You think that would be a natural thing, but that's a really huge question to answer. Maybe that has to do with our environment and our food and everything else. So, cannabidiol is a great anti-inflammatory that doesn't have the side effects of steroids and the NSAIDs and all of the other medications that are out there. So it's certainly something that could help with any of the things that you mentioned.
On top of that, what it can help with, maybe that's CBD, these other compounds aren't going to fully mitigate the situation. And so anyhow, maybe the CBD and the other compounds that are in these full spectrum extracts aren't going to totally mitigate the situation. However, it can help mitigate the autoimmune disorder or the chronic inflammation, etc. It can then reduce the amount of opiates, these other medicines that you may be taking for said syndrome, disease, or condition. So with many of our patients or people that we help, it doesn't always fully get rid of the medicine that they're using, but it drastically reduces the amount. And if you're reducing the amount of those medications that you're taking, you're therefore already on your way to better well-being and better health. It's not a cure-all, but it can help lower all those other things that you're currently taking, or potentially lower that. Does that help out? Sort of. Sort of, he says. To be continued. You'll have to come out to an educational seminar and talk with us. Yeah.
I just wanted to interject one thing real quick. And we're talking about acute medical conditions here, and that's very serious. I want to just personally advocate for CBD as a preventative medicine. And what we're seeing right now is a huge explosion in an emerging field called sports cannabis. And I'm an athlete at 38 years old. I've been running for 25 years, and I should have knee problems. I'm running every day, trail running and things like that. We're starting to see professional athletes that are coming out of incredibly rigorous workout lifestyles, finding tremendous benefits with these products. So as a preventative, as an anti-inflammatory, as a if we're talking about wellness type of product, it just runs the spectrum of positive solutions. So I really want to advocate for CBD and a lot of these products as preventative medicines as well.
I've used your product, and my mother also uses your product. My mother has Alzheimer's disease, and I just was hoping you could speak to the essential oils that are in the elixir and why those might be there.
So the essential oils that we use in the CBD elixir and tincture and unrefined coconut oil are from doTERRA. We use peppermint, myrrh, and frankincense. Those are the three that go into those
I was
products.
just wondering why you might
I'll
use
let
them.
the super expert answer the super question.
So I really love essential oils because they do so many things for us. But I did start consulting with Ted here about adding essential oils to some of their products and enhancing some of the terpene effects. So, frankincense is a wonderful essential oil that can cross the blood-brain barrier in 22 seconds. So it can act on your neurons. It's a very potent anti-inflammatory. It is wonderful for oxygenation of all of the tissues, including the brain tissues as well, and it has a lot of other chemoprotective effects. So against bad things that happen to cells in your brain. So that is it's a wonderful thing. It's great for migraines and things like that as well. The myrrh is also an ancient oil. It's very antimicrobial. It does a lot of great things for anxiety and even PTSD. There are even some stories in the Bible where they've anointed people with myrrh for various problems, anxiety, those kinds of things. And then peppermint is sort of amazing for a lot of different things as well. It's a good analgesic. It penetrates deeply into all layers of our tissues. All of the essential oils are very small molecules, and they are lipophilic, so they can go through the cell membranes very quickly. Pretty much affects every cell in your body in about 22 minutes. So those are the three oils that Ted had decided that were going to be most effective to add to his product.
Those are the three main oils. There's
main
about
oils,
15 others in there as well.